email thing I sent out. I tried to do a real enticer on those little reminders this week. I sent out a thing that said, did you know Jesus was in danger of becoming an addict? I said, I expected either people coming with clubs and, coming in. But now, if I can qualify it by clinically what we taught was an addict. An addict is somebody who has lost personal control of their mind, their reward center, and given that voluntarily over to another master, another authority, another power. And if we can call that addiction, then Jesus was in danger at one time. How so? Well, let me read you a story. Keeping in mind, you are now thinking clinically, and I'm going to read you a story you know from that side. And it's in Matthew 4, verse 1, starting there. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, afterward he was hungry. I love that. Talk about an understatement. 40 days. Yeah. I think he was very, very, very hungry. And then, keep this in mind too. You know when you're hungry, people aren't just hungry, are they? When you get hungry enough, you're irritable, you make bad decisions, there's all kinds of stuff that goes on. So it's not just a case of being hungry. But not surprising, this is when the tempter shows up. And he came to Jesus and he said, if you are the Son of God, command these stones to become bread. Kind of interesting if you ever see pictures of the area. I meant to put some in. The boulders look like loaves of bread in that area where he was all by himself. And you could see someone sitting there after 40 days and imagining that stone becoming this nice, soft, fresh loaf of bread. So the first thing. But Jesus says, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Then the devil took him up to the holy city, set him on the pinnacle of the temple, and said to him, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down. For it is written, he shall give his angels charge concerning you. And in their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. And Jesus said to him, it is written again, you shall not tempt the Lord your God. And then again the devil took him up on an exceedingly high mountain, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, all these things I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. Then Jesus said to him, away with you, Satan, for it is written, you shall not worship. You shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him. Jesus lived our whole temptation series in those 40 days. Everything we were talking about. In the first part of it, they were normal temptations. It was not wrong to want bread. It was not wrong to have an appetite. And in the second thing, he tempted him with security. Well, if God is really all, you won't even stub your foot. I mean, God will take care of you. So let's check it out and see if it's true. So he tempted him with normal things that aren't all that bad. It's the third one that turns into the whole idea of what addiction can be. If you give me authority, this is what I will give you. And this one was really slick. Satan knew why Jesus came. Jesus had one big purpose for his life, right? He came to save the world. Not to condemn, but to save the world. And he knew what would be involved in saving the world, and it was going to be a very, very heavy price. So Satan comes and says, all these kingdoms you're trying to save, I'll give them to you. You don't have to go through all that bloody, painful stuff. Here, I'll give them to you. Just one small thing. You have to worship me. You have to give me control and authority of the mind, of who you are, your soul. You have to give me authority. Isn't it funny? In most addictions, that's really kind of the way it works. We always look for the magic pill. It's always something hard, usually, at least. It is hard to build confidence in yourself. It is hard to become socially outward and comfortable. If you're kind of an enclosed person, that is a hard thing to do. Hey, what if I can just give you this little quick cure? Just drink this and you'll be fine. Here it is. Easy answer. Or in the case of like Snake up there, oh, I understand. You lost your brother. You're in such pain. Oh, to deal with that kind of pain, it's a lifetime thing. Hey, tell you what, just 5 minutes with this here little funny looking cigarette and it'll all go away. And then in time, this needle or whatever. Always the easy way to do something. And then the trap closes on it. And so when I say this, Jesus was in danger of being an addict. In a very real sense, it is absolutely true. Satan came when he was at his weakest. That's when you're usually hit. You're not hit when you're at your strongest. He was sleepless. He was hungry. He was emotionally near collapse. He was physically near collapse. He was in bad shape after 40 days in a hot wilderness. And all of these, here, quick pill. You don't have to go through any more pain. Just give me control. It's an important thing. It's an important thing to know that Jesus knows what the temptation to addiction is like. To turn over your authority. He knows what it's like to be tempted for that. And it's important for us to know. Hebrews 2:17 says this. And this is why it is important that he understands this. Hebrews 2:17, and it was necessary, and not that it was good, it was necessary for Jesus to be like us, his brothers, so that he could be merciful and faithful as a high priest before God, a priest who would be both merciful to us and faithful to God in dealing with the sins of the people. For since he himself has now been through suffering and temptation, he has been through it, he knows what it is like when we suffer and are tempted, and because of that it says he is wonderfully able to help us. Because he went through all of that, he is wonderfully able to help us. There's something to consider. We know God is perfect. We know God is holy. We know God is pure. We know God is innocent. And yet he understands the worst thing that has ever tempted a person. He understands. Something to consider. And because he understands, that's important to realize. He understands. And now this starts opening up the strategy of what he can do for you and me. And then we pop into Hebrews 4:16. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, and we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. How do you, okay, here it goes, pop Bible quiz. So you go to the throne, but how do you go? Thank you. Boldly. See, it's real easy for me because I've got the word boldly in big, bold print right here. It's boldly. And this is an important word because this is one of these words that in the English we kind of get the idea, but we miss a whole lot of the clues it's telling us. If we looked at this in the original Hebrew, we'd find that it means other things like all outspokenness, frankness, bluntness, publicity or to tell publicly, and it also means assurance. Think of what that means when you go before the throne with a temptation, that you go bold. You go with bluntness. God, you know what? You know that really ugly, nasty thing that's in my life? I'm telling you now, I really like that. Yeah, I know I'm before you, God, but I really like that. And what's more is I'm this far from doing anything to have that nasty thing. I really want it. And I'm just letting you know. That's how you can come before the throne in your time of need. And what's really mind-blowing is then what God can say to you. When you go and tell God, I want this nasty thing, do you know what he says back? He says, yeah, I understand. What? Yeah, I understand. I can sympathize. I've been through them. That's what Christ had done when he was on this earth. He understands he came not to condemn, not to scold, but to save. His mind. It starts there. It's an honesty before God that no matter what that thing is, that he understands. You don't have to try and hide it. It's amazing, isn't it? Because in the prison of addiction, the idea is to get you alone. You feel you are alone. Nobody else is like this. But God's way is that you are never alone. Hey, whatever you're going through, I've already been there. Already saw that. Already been there. I've got an answer for you. And then we get into the strategy of how he deals with the temptations. Now, I'm not going to be very long with this. Very quick, because God is simple in his plans. Effective, kind of the kiss method. Keep it simple, saints. I knew you were going to say that, Ron. Keep it simple, saints. 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. But God is faithful and will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. Okay, we all love it up to that. That means no matter what, I can take it. We like that. But then we miss the context of what's going on. You'll be able to stand what you are able. But with the temptation will also make the way of escape. Escape is the way that we are able. That you may be able to bear it until you escape. And then if we don't get the point, then 14 says, therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry. This is all about idolatry. You make something your idol. It becomes the most important thing. So when we're dealing with this, the first option is you see the temptation, you go in the other direction. The idea, if it was alcohol, you know what? Don't go hang around in bars. That's not the idea. Don't be around what tempts you. If it's something else, you simply, whatever it is, you go in the opposite direction. And then you might live what I'm just going to call, Bible doesn't call this, but it does explain it, the RST strategy is what I'm going to call it. After you leave it, the RST strategy. And this RST strategy is in Ephesians 5, starting at 18. Listen to what is said here. And do not be drunk with wine, in which is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another in psalms and hymns, and I'm encapsulating, giving thanks always for all things to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. 21, submitting to one another in fear of God. The RST method works like this, and it's all in those statements. It starts with replace. The fact is, nobody will put up with a sense of deprivation over the long haul. If your religion, your faith, your answer to whatever the problem might be to deprive yourself of something, I would try this. I mean, if you, like we said, if you really like chocolate, try just depriving yourself of chocolate. You know, you might be good for a month, who knows. But at some point, because you are deprived, you will go back to what you want. So the answer is to replace. The medical community knows this. They do this in detox or whatever. God knew this long before we even knew what medicine was, is to replace. You replace the wrong thing with something that's better. Jesus says, I am the better replacement. Come to me if you're weak. Come to me if you're weary. All of these things. Jesus is the great I am. As a matter of fact, if our Christian walk is still such in our mindset and everything that we have to give up things to be with God and we're deprived, you know what? You're on really dangerous ground. Until the point we reach that there's nothing that can compete with what it is to have a relationship with God, only then are we reaching really a point of safety. Replace, not deprive. The S is support. Real interesting. The one commandment, besides love your God, what are we told to do? Love who else? The neighbor, yeah, there we go. Or one another. It's even better as we go on in the New Testament. One another. And loving one another is then explained and commanded over and over in the New Testament, and then explained in several ways. To love one another means by times to remind one another of things. It means to correct one another at times. It means to be accountable to one another at times. It means to encourage one another. It means to be an example for one another. It means to be a general means of support to one another, and above all, to pray for one another. All of these things. You know, when we talk about small groups and Bible studies and all this, and it's not a whole lot of people, that's the idea, is that lives come together and people are touching one another in the sense of life. One another, that's it. And doesn't that fit in well with this whole idea of temptation, especially addiction? AA or any of those things, you don't do it by yourself. You do it with one another. God was way ahead on that one. You're never alone. Right down to the mentality of what Christianity is. Christ says, I was tempted. You're never alone. Support is important. The S. T stands simply for thanks. It's amazing what a simple attitude of gratitude will do for you. Just that alone. It can be something that keeps you from getting self-absorbed. It can be something that will save you from getting into a pity party or getting discouraged. Because when those things happen, there's an open door, isn't it? We might have all the reasons in the world to feel bad about something about ourselves at the time. But if we allow that door to stay open, man, bad decisions start coming in. And they'll start coming in like a floodgate. It says in that verse we read, thank God always. You know why you thank God? It is not because it's a nice thing to do. Oh, by the way, God, thank you. Thanking, this attitude of gratitude is one of the most powerful means of self-defense in the universe. If you are in a mentality of gratitude, it is amazing what it alone can take you through, let alone involved with all the other things that we've talked about. And above all, we have to reach a point we believe we need a Savior. There's a problem in Christianity, I think, today. It has become a means of improvement. You know, I become a Christian because I want to be a better person. Well, I hope that, I would become a better person. But it's not about that. God came to save the world. And save is a whole other situation. If we looked up for the definition in our language of save, it would say to rescue from harm or danger, to prevent the waste of or the loss of, and if you were in sports, to preserve a victory in. So Jesus and the whole idea of God sending His Son to sacrifice Himself, open the door to heaven for us, is such that even when we're squeezed by things like addiction, that Jesus is there not to condemn, but He is there to prevent the waste of that life. Jesus is there to preserve the victory in that life. He is there for your life and my life. We need the rescue no matter how good we think we are. And we are in serious trouble until we know we need someone to rescue us beyond ourselves.